Hey everyone, it's Jordan El-Hag here from El-Hag and Associates PC. We are a labor and employment law firm located in Westchester, New York, and we only represent employees. We do not represent business owners. So if you are working in New York or New Jersey and you're having some problems in the workplace, feel free to give us a call and we'd be happy to give you some legal advice. Now today I'm going to be talking about why your lawsuit might not be settling, which is a follow-up to our prior video on why you should almost always settle your lawsuit. Now, before I get into that, I want to provide our quick legal disclaimer. This is not legal advice. I am not forming an attorney-client relationship with you. This is for educational purposes only, and everybody's situation is unique. So if you have any questions about your specific situation, feel free to give us a call or any other lawyer to find out what you should do in your particular situation. So in my prior video, I had explained that you should almost always settle your lawsuit if you have the opportunity. And I also said in that video that it's about 97% of cases that actually settle. They resolve through settlement. But that means that about 3% of cases don't settle and they're decided by a decision from the court. So I'd like to take this opportunity to explain why that might be happening to you, or if you're considering getting into a lawsuit, this can provide you some things to look out for when you're proceeding through the litigation. Now, there's only about 3 reasons why a lawsuit might not be settling. Number 1 is there's a lawyer in the case that is an idiot. Number 2 is there is a client in the case that is an idiot. And number 3 is that your case might just be horrible. If any of these 3 factors is actually present in your lawsuit, then it's going to be very hard for you to reach a settlement in your circumstances. Let me explain. So how does a lawyer impact the ability for you to settle your lawsuit? There's really 2 ways that this comes about. The first is if you're dealing with lawyers that are paid on an hourly basis. I don't take cases where I'm paid hourly generally. I get paid if we win the case. So I take a percentage of what we win. And if we lose, the client doesn't have any exposure for the cost of the litigation or paying legal fees to me. But there are cases where people pay their attorney by the hour. And typically, the people defending a lawsuit have to pay their lawyer by the hour. It's not on a percentage basis. And when you have a lawyer who's being paid by the hour, they don't have an incentive to settle your lawsuit. They have an incentive to drag the case on and drive up their hourly rates. Is that proper for lawyers to do? Absolutely not. Is it ethical? Absolutely not. It's actually an ethical violation that the lawyer can get in trouble for, but you'd have to prove that they're intentionally trying to do that. And, lawyers who try to drive up their bill know how to work the case in such a way that you probably are not aware that it's occurring, and they can justify pushing the case forward when it really doesn't need to. And those kind of lawyers also have no incentive to settle a lawsuit, right? So when I take a case, or any other lawyer who takes a case on a contingency, they are incentivized to try to settle the case, right, and be efficient with it. Some would argue that you're incentivized to settle it because you are not getting paid by the hour, but because your fees are in contingency cases connected to how much money you win, I don't really think that's a valid argument, right? The contingency lawyer gets more money, the better the outcome of the case. But the hourly attorney doesn't really have an incentive to settle the lawsuit. They don't really care. Do they want to win? Absolutely. Every lawyer wants to win the case. However, it doesn't matter one way or another. If you win or lose, they're still going to get paid, and they get paid very well. So if you have a lawyer that's really trying to drive up the cost, case is probably not going to easily settle. Now, the second way that lawyers can hinder your ability to settle your lawsuit is by driving their ego. See, there are a lot of lawyers that look at lawsuits as an opportunity to compete with other people. Uh, Lawyers who are in litigation are competitive by nature. I think they want to always try to win, but you have some that they just treat the case as like this intellectual um, combat where they want to prove how good they are, almost like they're in a TV show, and they are not really looking out for your best interest. They want to show you how smart they are. They want to show the other lawyers in the world how smart they are. And they think that they can win every case. And instead of trying to get a good outcome, they're really focused on trying to prove to the world that they are the best lawyer ever and that they can create this miraculous outcome. And people describe a lot of them as pit bull lawyers or Rambo lawyers. And they really aren't focusing on your outcome. What do you want? Because most clients, they don't want to be in the legal system. They don't want to be bogged down in a lawsuit. They want to go on with their lives. But litigation attorneys, a lot of them get off on being in the courtroom, on going through the process, on being adversarial, and they think that their clients, they like that. They want to see that they're fighting on their behalf. And it's really a detrimental viewpoint because they think they're so good at their job that they make these ridiculous lowball settlement offers that are never going to get accepted. And they tell the other lawyer, well, then I'll see you in court and I'm going to beat you in court. And you don't know what is happening in these settlement discussions. And there's really like a breakdown of communication between the two representatives. And that ends up going forward when it really could have settled. Some things to look out for if you have an attorney like that is if the attorney is talking a lot about themselves, like, I'm going to win this case, don't worry, I got it handled, this is a slam dunk case, I'm so much better than this other lawyer. Those are not factors that you should take into consideration when trying to settle your lawsuit. You need to look at the facts of your case, the witnesses, the evidence, and you need to evaluate whether or not your presentation of the case is going to be persuasive enough to the judge or the jury, and not that your lawyer is this super advocate, that can persuade everybody or anybody of anything, because no one can do that. It's impossible. Now, those are the two ways that lawyers can really hinder settling a case, but clients are really one of the main reasons why lawsuits don't settle. If your lawsuit's not settling and you have two good representatives involved in the lawsuit, then that's because one of the clients is being an idiot and unreasonable. There are people who they don't litigate based on the economics of it. They look at the principle of the case, and if they're paying the lawyer by the hour and that's how they want to spend their money, then I suppose that's their right to do it, because anyone can spend their money any way they please. But from an economic standpoint, if you do the math, it's almost always better to settle. I mean, if you have a case that's hundreds of millions of dollars or multi-million-dollar cases, then the cost is generally far outweighed by the potential risk, of litigating the case. But for the most part, the cases should be settled. So you have a client that says, I don't care about the money, it's about the principle, or I'm not paying anything, I don't care what it takes. The case isn't going to settle because that person's just being unreasonable. And there are people out there like that. You might be a person like that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but if you have one person in the case on either side like that, I don't think it's acting intelligently. Every case is different, but as a general standpoint, I don't think people should behave that way when evaluating these kind of decisions. And when you have a client like that, or we're dealing with a client like that on the other side, 99% of the times the case isn't going to settle. And a lot of times lawyers have to drop the client because their expectations are just so unreasonable, and they're not willing to adjust the way that they're approaching the case. So, when you're going into the lawsuit, you really need to prioritize your goals and your expectations, and decide what you're going into this lawsuit for, and be upfront with your lawyer about what it is you're getting into this for. Now, I will say that I probably experience this more because I am a contingency-based lawyer, because my clients don't pay me by the hour to litigate the case. They don't pay the costs of the lawsuit. But when they're paying their attorney hourly, then their approach to the case is a lot different, right? Because when a client has to pay their lawyer hundreds of dollars an hour, from $250 an hour up to $1,000 an hour, then they're really going to readjust their approach to the case and settling, because if there's a reasonable settlement offer on the table and the client says, no, I don't want to take that settlement, well, in that case, they're going to know it might cost them, $100,000 more to litigate the case, and then at the end of the day, they might lose it. So when I take a case on a contingencies, a lot of times my clients are saying, well, I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk going forward. It's about the principle. And I tell them, well, you know what? If you were paying me, $350 an hour, and you had to pay all the expenses of this lawsuit, and then you might lose at the end of the day, so you actually lost, $50,000 to $100,000, would you still not take this settlement? And when they sit there and think about it, they say, no, I wouldn't approach the case the same way. Now, if you have that conversation with a client and they think that, well, I don't really care about that, that's the arrangement, then that's really a poor attorney-client relationship, and you really should not be dealing with your lawyer in that fashion, in my opinion. Now, if you decide that, that's how you want to approach a lawsuit, then you really should tell your lawyer, I want to take this all the way, and not be on a contingency. You should tell them you're going to pay them by the hour to prove that you're that committed to the case. So, if you're one of those kind of clients, either way, being unreasonable, it's about the principle, then, your lawsuit's probably not going to be resolved very easily. Now the final way that lawsuits are not going to settle is if you just have a really bad case and you're not going to accept the fact that your case is bad. And this really ties into the first two reasons I gave before, because evaluating the case is really the role of the attorney, and an attorney might look at the case and say, you know what, based on all the evidence that's been produced to date, we don't have a good case, and we really should try to settle whatever it is, get you some money, and try to walk out of this thing with a bird in the hand. That would be a reasonable attorney advising you. An unreasonable one would be looking at the evidence saying, hey, this is not a good case, and saying, well, I'm the best lawyer in the world and my skills can overcome bad evidence, so let's not worry about it and let's go forward. That's a bad lawyer and giving you bad advice, because the analysis should always be on the evidence of the case. Now, if you have this reasonable lawyer that said, look, we don't have a good case and we should settle it, and then you are being unreasonable, then the case isn't going to settle, because you're not going to accept the fact that you have a really bad case. I get calls every day from people that have been fired and they're so angry, and I tell them, you really don't have a good case, and they say, well, I'm going to call another lawyer because I just feel like what was done was wrong. And I say, I think it was unfair, but it doesn't mean it's unlawful. But they don't want to accept that fact, and obviously everyone's free to get second, third, fourth, fifth opinion. But when a case is bad, generally, what's going to happen is you're going to have one party receiving a lopsided settlement, right? If the defendants have a bad case, the people getting sued have a bad case, then they're going to end up paying a lot of money in a settlement, and you're going to be getting a lot. right? And they're not going to be happy with that settlement. Vice versa, if you have a really bad case and you're bringing a lawsuit and the other side knows that and you know that, you're going to be getting a little bit of money and you're going to be really unhappy about that. But that's the way it shakes out sometimes. Sometimes you just don't have the evidence, the witnesses, or the documents to prove your case, even though you know what happened. And, you have to take a hit on the chin and just try to walk out with whatever you can. But in those circumstances, you can see why somebody being that unhappy with settling is going to resist entering a settlement in the first place. Now, whether or not you have a good or bad case is really a whole nother blog topic, which I will post in the near future. But those are really the main reasons why your settlement, or why you might not reach settlement in your lawsuit. It really comes down to the lawyers, the clients, or the strength of your case. So if any of those things are present, probably not going to settle. But if you're considering getting a lawsuit, you have some questions based on this, you can give us a call. But that's it for today in this topic, and I appreciate you tuning in. And please subscribe to the channel if you like our content, because the more subscriptions we get, the more people become aware of these videos. And I think it's really important that working men and women are aware of their rights in the workplace, because the more they are, they'll stand up for themselves, and the better working conditions will be for everyone. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great day.